Hello and welcome to another week's Monday Night Fitba. We're going to get straight down to business tonight because despite two rather drab affairs at the weekend, we've got quite a lot to pile through. So I'm joined by Ross, Mikey and Scott. Opening question, guys, thought up by our very own Ross, so he's kind of been cheating here. So what he suggested is, with Roy Keane's book being released and slating everyone, who would you like to see release an autobiography that's connected to Hearts or Hibs, and what would it be called? Scott, do you want to go first?
Well, I was struggling to think of autobiographies, so I thought I'd just give it a different slant. I thought round about Christmas time there's always plenty of cookbooks for women wanting to do their Christmas dinners. Sorry if that sounds a bit sexist. So I thought, how about something for the guys that maybe just want to get, something ordered in. So I thought maybe Christian Naddy could do like a Christmas food book. Just recommend all the local Greggs and McDonald's that you could go to on Christmas night.
I don't know, now he might be too to touch because he doesn't look like he's been Greg.
I'm referring to the one that I had to watch.
Okay.
It'd be protein shakes now, sure.
Looks like you're running through treacle every week.
One, two.
Okay, Ross?
Well, I've decided on basically that the be Rudy Scatchell, and the title would be the New Testament. So it's basically the sequel to the Bible, and you'd have all the different roles in it. Obviously, George Burley being God at the time, sacrificing Rudy Scatchell to Satan, played by Derek Riordan, who tried to take him out, and he obviously came back. Not in the original book, he came back from the dead. So did Rudy Scatchell, came back to Hearts. So yeah, definitely Rudy Scatchell, the New Testament.
Okay.
The only problem is when he was splitting the wine, George Burley would have drank it all by the chance.
Allegedly.
No, there's no allegedly about it.
It's fair to see who had a whole week to practice that. Okay, Mikey, what you got, mate?
I'd had a couple of thoughts. I thought maybe a Russell Latafe could have been quite interesting, but we probably know most of his stories anyway, and it would have just made us pine for a life in the Caribbean. Frank Soze maybe could have told us about what really was going on when he tried to be a football manager and when he left and why he's not been back. But what I'm going to go for is a bit of a legend of the football club, Ole Gottskallsen.
Okay.
It'd be called Losing My Grip, which would tie into a few different elements of his abilities and personality as a person. Obviously he was shall we say an inconsistent performer for Hibs in his goalkeeping duties. He, after leaving Hibs, he ended up, I think, not failing a drugs test, but refusing to take one.
Okay.
Obviously, he was in English football. I think he jumped out the window of the toilet, something along those lines. Very kind of very slapstick Hollywood, and I think he also ended up being done for burglary. So he took up a long and winding road. That's prior to his career, obviously, as an international basketball player before he signed for Hibs. So yeah, I think Losing My Grip by Ole Gottskallsen could be quite an intriguing read.
That's definitely an interesting story. I've gone with a slightly more obvious tack. So the first one, mega obvious, Phil Stamp, 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps. And I thought Vladimir Romanov was obviously Mein Kampf, whatever the Russian translation of that is. My struggle, his crusade against Scottish footballing authorities and his desire to eradicate them from the face of the earth. So
Gary McKay.
right, that's our touch of hilarity for the week. Let's get down to the weekend's football. Right, I think we'll go with Hibs first, because we may run out of things to say.
Very short and sweet.
Yeah.
Summer.
So straight away, we've all seen it. We'll keep this open to everyone, not just focusing on yourself for the minute, Mikey. The goal that wasn't. What's your take on it? Who do you blame for it? Are you 100% set on this idea that it was definitively over the line and it was a clanger from the referee? What do we think?
Even on the poor Hibs TV highlights that I was subject to, I would say it definitely looked a goal, and I don't know how the linesman couldn't see from his viewpoint. There was a suggestion on radio that the linesman and the referee had thought that the keeper had saved it and actually turned away for a second, and maybe that's why they couldn't give the goal, but I don't know. But it was a poor decision.
The photo on Twitter certainly seems to show the referee still looking in that direction at the time,
just consciously deciding it wasn't a goal. So obviously it's becoming a sort of an annual thing, with us being denied quite clear goals that have been crossing the line. I'm not trying to sound too bitter there, but yeah, it looked a goal. without having the old goal line technology, it's impossible to tell for sure, but it looked a pretty raw deal for us. But we probably shouldn't be relying on a penalty kick to be beating Dumbarton at home. That would be my sort of general kind of belief on the whole.
That's the bigger topic, and that's the first question that I have on the game. Is how worrying is it, particularly in light of how much we praised Hibs for their clinical finishing a fortnight ago at Ibrox, that you can have 14 shots on target in a game at Easter Road and still not score?
I think mainly because a lot of them weren't very good. There was a lot from long range, which may have kind of skewed the real sort of detail of the number of shots on goal. 24 on goal, 16 on target, 60% possession, but there weren't... The Barton keeper's probably made one really good save from McGeoch. Beyond that, it's relatively comfortable stuff. It's sort of long range shots, scuffed miss hits, a few sort of headers for corners that were quite sort of generous to him. There wasn't really a great deal that he had to do. I think a lot of the problem we had was that the opportunities weren't falling within the penalty area, apart from the penalty, of course, which we almost took care of. But beyond that, it was things from distance and sort of quite a kind of ambitious effort. So there seems to be a bit of a problem with us creating good chances rather than just kind of sort of somewhat half chances.
Well, that leads us on pretty well to the tactics then. So to touch on those, the team picked by Alan Stubbs, he did, as we said last week, sacrifice one of the three in midfield, but he threw us all a bit of a curveball in that he sacrificed the one man we thought was entirely safe in Scott Allen and stuck with Scott Robertson and Liam Craig. We know, based on what you said last week, that wasn't what you would have done. Mm-hmm. How surprised were you that that's what Stubbs did?
As much as I would have liked to have seen change things, I expected him to go proud and Gray was fit with that 11 that he would have intended to play. So I didn't expect him to drop Allen out. And to be honest, I don't think it greatly affected the sort of outcome of the game. I think it was the setup of Dumbarton, I think, was the key thing to how the key reason for us not getting the result. They sat very deep, very narrow. They allowed us to have the ball in wide areas. The majority of chances were created from Stevenson and Gray putting crosses in the box, assuming that Malonga, as a sort of quite a tall guy, is going to win headers, but he doesn't appear to be that kind of player. He seems more of a touch player. So we're putting crosses in the box for guys who aren't necessarily going to win them, and Dumbarton line up with basically four centre halves across their back four in a very narrow system. They're going to win them all day long, and the second balls we're getting were from far too deep, 25 yards out instead of the edge of the box. So we're going to have to come up with some sort of solution as to how we play against sides coming to Easter Road and setting up in that kind of fashion, which has happened already quite a bit this season and will continue to do so, given that it's proven successful for teams.
It's funny that you bring that up, actually, because that is almost exactly the conversation I remember us having after Hearts played Dumbarton, and that we said we kept knocking these high balls into the 6 yard box thinking that So will eventually win one because he's 6'4", but he's no very good in the air. He's 6'4", but he uses his frame to hold the ball in and plays a target man and be uncomfortable for defenders. But ultimately, if you've not got the guy in there who's going to dominate in the air, that tactic is fruitless quite a lot of the time. Right, well, on the tactics still, Stubbs did sacrifice Fontaine for Kennedy after about an hour, which seemed to go a wee bit more of a conventional four at the back, maybe a slightly more attacking formation. Does that then acknowledge that he's now seeing that the 3-5-2 maybe isn't the formation for games like that at Easter Road, or is it just a couple of minor tweaks away from being good enough to win those games?
I think that it's got its place. Obviously it's proved at Ibrox it has its place, but we need to be impacting on the game a lot more and taking control of the game from the first minute against the seemingly weaker sides at home. And if that means that every few weeks we have to sacrifice either one of the centre halves, or we move Hanlon to left back, Stevenson plays a bit further forward, he's had some of his better games for us this season. We have to review that, but it seems like he's, like we were saying last week, he's still, I think, playing about with it. He's now established that 3-5-2 doesn't get us beat, and he starts off in that fashion, and maybe he's trying, although the shape might be the same, trying different personnel within it at the start of each game to see what has the greater effect, and if it's not working then they can go to a more traditional 4-4-2 that any player will be comfortable with. But I think there needs to be a different start to each game in terms of us having a mentality where we take it to the opposition from the start, and it's got to be fast paced, and it's got to be with variety as well, not just sort of crosses from 25 yards out into guys who maybe aren't going to win them. It needs to be possibly cutbacks for the byline for our kind of sort of smaller, sort of more kind of technically capable strikers, rather than big battering rams who's our main guys lying with a snapped Achilles just now.
Okay, one final personnel question then, and it is that this is the classic hindsight slightly naughty fan question. Sam Stanton scored a hat-trick, I believe, for Hibs under-20s last week, and scored a late winner against the same opposition just over a month ago. Was it a surprise that he wasn't used towards the death, maybe to bring something at the table?
Absolutely. I think he certainly probably earned the right to be considered back into the squad that was stripped. There may be a reason that he wasn't. McGeoch has been playing well in the games he's been playing. Allen's not been playing badly. He might just want to give McGeoch the opportunity the weekend there, but it might have been he could be on there as a curveball, as an alternative to say Harris or Kennedy, Sinclair. And when the guy's confidence seems to be sparking a wee bit, which wasn't at the start of the season, bring him back in, give him 10-15 minutes. But it might have been the case that in advance, might have knowledge it's going to be a tough match against Dumbarton, and the way they were going to set up, it might not have been set up for somebody like Stanton to come in and change it, with like probably two really solid banks of four in front of him, and he might have got frustrated again and lost a wee bit of confidence if he's trying to take some risky passes. But he will have to be under consideration for the games ahead. Hat-trick even at a level, especially the quality of the goals. He's definitely got it in him, and he has shown last season that he definitely has something special about him.
Okay, final question on Hibs then, because we didn't like to be too negative in it. There is a wee bit of a cloud over it, but on that, going by Mickey Weir's column and the fans' thoughts in the Evening News today, and just the general things that you're seeing around the night from Hibs supporters, the bleakness, for want of a better word, of the current situation seems to start to be taking a toll now. That people have been able to say, we've got to give it time and that kind of thing. But at this moment in time, it's starting to get a wee bit much when the decisions are starting to go against you as well, and you're looking at the league table and the gaps are getting further and further and potentially smaller to the bottom of the table. Are you really concerned by that now, or is it the case that win your next two games and your fortunes have changed completely?
I think that the second point, like football fans, we are the old cliche, like astoundingly fickle. A couple of results is what we need, and it will change the mentality on and off the park. In the stands, the fans are ready to support the team, and I think they're doing their best during the games, but it's becoming quite difficult to sort of maintain it for 90 minutes, to truly believe we're going to get a goal, we're going to get a second and a third. So I think that the results will be great if obviously it's not just been this season, it's been for a couple of seasons, probably longer than that now, where it's been quite a consistent pattern of us not really getting a run of results, and it's difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel for quite a lot of the support at the moment, I think. So that's they need a couple of results as ugly as possible, but a couple of wins that will just make them believe that as bad as we're playing, we can pick up points, and then we have a good result and we can maybe give somebody a bit of a hammering at some point. I think that's what requires, a couple of really ugly results to get things turned around. Yeah,
it's a funny one, because it's something that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago in terms of the Ross County and the Rangers games coming along. Maybe those were the big games that Hibs needed to win to turn the season around. But now it almost the fans go the other way potentially, where they say, well, it's easy to get yourself up for those games, the games where you're no favourites, or the games where you're up against it at Ibrox or away in the cup to an SPL team and that kind of thing. And now the question is, why can we not do that against Wraith Rovers at home and Dumbarton at home? And that then actually potentially causes more questions until you prove, like you say, that you can tough those games out and win them, which is a big precursor to the Hearts discussion that we're going to have in a few minutes. Just on that final point about Hibs, what's the Jambo perspective on that? Is it the belief that they are only a couple of wins away, or do we think we've seen those couple of big wins against Ross County and Rangers and they've just fallen right back into the inconsistency that they've shown all season?
I think Stubbs needs to ditch the conservative style of play at home. he can play 3-5-2, that isn't a problem, but when you've got 3 able centre halves up against Colin Nish, you should probably be able to play Harris and Kennedy out wide and have a 3-5-2, but have them more as wingers rather than wing backs. I think having 5 primarily defenders lining up at home to a part-time side is probably a bit too conservative. A lot of his substitutions also seem to be reactive rather than proactive. Rather than make the change before the game or early in the game, it seems to be the same changes. I'll bring Craig off with 10 minutes, I'll bring Heffernan on for 5. There doesn't seem to be a lot of thought going on in terms of his substitutions. He does seem to be able to acknowledge areas of the park that need strengthened. In the transfer market, his activity in the transfer market has been pretty decent, but tactically and observing games and knowing when to change them seems to be his weaker points, just for an outside view just now.
Okay. I absolutely agree with Scott there. And something else to touch on is, I think after the Rangers game, I think Stubbs maybe got a bit too excited with the kind of system they was going to play, and this kind of seemed to be the second coming, and the everything's going to be fine from now on. But the next group of games, I know, which we'll come on to later, I think Hibs may pick a wee bit more points up. I don't see them kind of setting the league alight, but they are improving. There's no doubt they are improving. But I mean, there's a fine line between a good result and a bad result, as by the weekend there. I mean, look at our game. We got a jammy goal near the end there. Otherwise, we'd be having the same conversation about the result of the weekend as Hibs fans. I mean, it's not that much of not that many areas they have to greatly improve on. They just need to be more consistent, and hopefully Stubbs can bring them together.
Yeah, but at times when you're so close and yet so far, that's sometimes more galling than anything else. Okay, we'll leave it there for Hibs. There's going to be loads of chat in the build-up to about importance of results and that kind of thing, in the build-up to arguably the most important game of the season so far in a couple of weeks, Easter Road, which we're going to have masses and masses of build-up to. We promise we'll have a huge reaction show planned and that kind of thing. And we'll start to give you an idea of what to expect from those shows over the next week or two. Just now we're going to go to a break, and we will come back to analyse Hearts' 1-0 victory at Alloa. Thank you for staying with us on Monday Night Football on Radio Saltire. Get in touch with us with your thoughts on the weekend's games or any of the other points that we're going to discuss on Twitter at MNFootball, or on Facebook at Monday Night Football, FITBA. Let's move on to Hearts now. Robbie Nielsen said in today's Evening News, at the end of the day it's 3 points. Nobody cares how you got them. Is he right, Ross?
In a sense, yes. I would totally agree with that, but you still got that thing in the back of your mind, it's only 1-0, and then you look at the game itself and you realise there's only one shot on goal, and then you covered it a little bit earlier. It was only a deflection which was what went on target. So I mean, we'll take it, obviously, there's no questions about that. We're absolutely delighted. It keeps us at the top of the table. That gap's still there, and allows us a bit of leeway in the next couple of groups of games. So I mean, no, I'm absolutely chuffed with that, and I'll take any win. It could be hit off someone's backside and go, and I couldn't care less.
Scott, how much does that statement it's a lot easier to say that when you've had 5 wins and 4 wins and 3-0s over the last few weeks. Is he right though? At the end of the day, would we take winning every game till the rest of the season the way we did on Saturday if it means we win the league at the end?
Yes, of course you will.
It may take a couple of years, I feel like,
because that is the thing. It is easy to say win every game 1-0, but win every game 1-0 with a last minute goal and you've no hair left by the end of the season.
I was one of the ones after the Dumbarton game who said that we were going to have to be quite patient in a lot of matches, and it might just be a 1-0 game in the 85th minute. I did say last week I thought we were going to win just by a goal, after hearing reports about the park and obviously the game that Al had given Rangers and Hibs in previous weeks. I did think it was probably going to be our toughest test. Their 2 centre halves seemed to cope with Big So pretty well, and we were limited to 2 or 3 maybe half decent chances in the game. So to come away with a 1-0 result's brilliant, especially considering we're playing with 10 men with the last 10 minutes.
the pitch is a great point to bring up now. After all the discussion prior to the game, how big an impact did we think it had on Hearts' performance in particular?
Before I touch on that, I'm absolutely delighted that Robbie Neilson took up the offer from, well, not an offer from Alloa, but we took up on the availability to train on Alloa's pitch, which for some people, some kind of, you know, especially in the Hibs forms and stuff, they were kind of baffled by that and kind of saying, well, why have Alloa given them the advantage? But no one else has done that. So, I mean, props to Robbie Neilson for doing that.
The idea that is classified as thinking outside of the box shows how backwards Scottish football is at times. The idea that, well, why don't we prepare for playing on that pitch by playing on that pitch?
I think it shows you the arrogance of Rangers. I think Rangers are probably just too arrogant to probably give it any second thought.
There is an element of that, especially for a club who, while they were about to be liquidated, were still paying for hotels in Edinburgh rather than drive through an hour and a half to Tynecastle on the day of the game.
When the majority of their players actually live in Edinburgh.
True, very true.
No, but back to the pitch, I mean, we knew it was always going to be an issue, and some of the players that were on the park may have reflected the type of surfers we were playing on. I mean, I did say kinda that McGee might stay in, Patterson might come in, but he stuck with McGee, and even Piardo didn't get a game. He's coming back for fitness, so I think he's with the couple of changes that he made, it was more safe changes rather than trying to bring on someone who's going to score 3 goals or whatever. So yeah, I mean, the pitch did play a part, there's no doubt about it, but I think playing Community South the week before also helped as well.
I thought the strangest thing about the pitch, and I think it was one of the main reasons that Dale Carrick played, was his ability to run the channels, because there was a weird thing with the pitch that you noticed straight from the warm-up, is that any balls were high just held up instantly. They just stopped almost. They bounced, but it was like there was the most backspin ever on every long ball. It was really weird, and it kind of, I think, negatively affected us in that we started pumping these long balls into the channels for Carrick to run onto, but we weren't really getting anything off of that. He was either being shrugged off by guys who are more physical than him, or he got there but we hadn't got support in quick enough. It was a strange pitch.
I felt there was a game plan. Obviously, after training on it during the week, there was definitely a game plan. They did try to implement it. In some aspects it did work, but Alloa played a very good game. Their 2 centre halves were excellent. Even Simmons actually had a half decent game.
It pains me to say
it. I did hear that he was referred to as the old Hearts favourite on 4-2, which clearly means that they've never done any research at Tynecastle before. But yeah, even Simmons had a half decent game. They were causing us problems up top as well. Alexander had to make a couple of good saves. So, like I said, 1-0's an excellent result given all those factors.
I have to say it's a funny point on Simmons that I was fairly laid back when they were starting to pin us back a wee bit in the second half, because I was thinking, we'll ride this and we've still got there's still a goal in us, there's still a chance in us, and then he played a through ball and the guy nearly scored, and I thought, this is too far. But when Stephen Simmons is playing number 10 against us, we really need to get a grip of this. On your point there with Alexander, it's a funny one, because Alloa actually didn't have a single shot on target, and yet the general consensus is that Neil Alexander was there or thereabouts in the man of the match conversation, particularly for those at the game, for the benefit of those not at the game, because I had a real struggle articulating to my wee brother who wasn't there how someone can be man of the match while not making an actual save at any point. Why was Alexander so crucial? Why was he so influential in the game?
His positioning is top notch. You can tell that he's been a Scotland internationalist. You can tell he's been at Rangers and Palace. His positioning is brilliant. Also, his vocal work. He organises the back four. He's always screaming at the back four when we're in possession, when we're not in possession. He's very vital to that spine of the team. You can see, although we've talked in previous weeks about Neilson chopping and changing, it's only in certain areas. We've got a spine now with Alexander, Ostert, Wilson, Gomez, Boabin and So, and very rarely will you see any of those 6 players out the team, and then we'll make changes with some of the younger players down the flanks. Alexander is very vital for us this season. As much as I like Hamilton as a goalkeeper, Alexander needs to be playing most weeks.
It is interesting that just a month ago we were having debates about how harsh it would be on Jack Hamilton for him to drop out, and yet now there's no question that Alexander's playing every single week. Ross, what is it about him that has, because in actual fact we've been dominant in quite a lot of games, he's not had very much to do. Why is it that we've taken him to heart so quickly?
Well, the fact that he's doing two roles as well, so he's obviously the goalkeeping coach, and he's got two really young guys underneath him in terms of
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think that they will look up to him. I mean, and Gallagher obviously had looked up to him in the past as well at Rangers, and even when he was at Rangers, I was thinking to myself, I'd love to have him in goals, and I think everyone was like that as well. And to be fair, he should be in a bigger team than us, even at the age he's at. He really should be. I think I'm surprised no one's kind of taken him on. I think the lure of the coaching job as well has got him Hearts, and the fact he's a Hearts fan.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's just he's like another kind of Rudy Scatchell type, the personality. You can see that he's in the changing room. He's definitely one of the guys that's getting everyone together and getting everyone in the same mindset before games.
It was Saturday was a really interesting game in that respect, in terms of seeing his influence on the team, because at points it was a weird atmosphere and it went really quiet, and because you were kind of so close to the pitch at Recreation Park or the Indodrill Stadium, you could hear a lot of what was being said. And it's funny, you have those moments with managers, especially when a new manager comes in and you're watching the game and you think, we need to take him off and get him on, and the manager does that 7 minutes later and you think, this guy gets it, and you have that moment of connection with the manager and you're totally bought in then. I remember George Burley having a few moments like that. There was one moment on Saturday where I think Sam Nicholson got the ball on the right flank and cut inside, and it was obvious that Patterson had to get round him, and I shouted the same thing, Callum, you've got to get round. And then Alexander, a split second later, shouted the exact same thing from 60 yards away, but telling Patterson to get round. And you have that moment where you think, it's good to have a goalie who can talk, that actually understands the game. He's a coach for a reason. He's got a proper understanding of how the game's played. On the subject of Callum Patterson, fullbacks, we've spoken about it a wee bit before. The fact that he picked those two again, McGee and Eckersley, but brought Patterson on when it was clear we needed a goal, does that serve to illustrate that in actual fact the plastic pitch wasn't as much of an issue, but that Eckersley and McGee are our defensive, kind of slightly more no-frills away options, and McHattie and Patterson are our rampaging, attacking home fullbacks?
Yeah, I mean, you picked up on that last week as well. You were absolutely spot on. You brought up the question of those two being our, when we think we're going to have that type of game, we're going to stick with these guys, because McHattie and Patterson, they'll definitely get up the park for you, but there will be times where they might leave a bit of space there. Yes, Gomez will pick up that space, not a problem, but you've got to kind of at home anyway, you've got to be looking for goals, especially from kind of wide areas. And to say we're having this conversation that even our wing backs could be getting on the score sheet every week is obviously fantastic. So yeah, I absolutely agree with your point last week, and I would say we need to stick with that as well.
Well, it's an odd scenario, Scott, to be half an hour to go in a game, you're desperate for a goal, and an attacking changes, sub your right back for another right back. It's a weird scenario that you would have maybe only seen with, say, Tottenham with Gareth Bale or
Football
like
Manager.
That. Yeah.
The weird thing is, Patterson probably is our most aggressive attacker of the ball in the air. So in El Hashnui definitely don't offer us that option. So Patterson probably still, even although a lot of us would probably lament his attacking style when he was played up front, he's definitely our best player in terms of winning balls in the air going forward, at least.
And he was mega unlucky with that one towering header that he managed to get, where he just couldn't get over it quite enough. Right, one final question on Hearts then before we move on to more general discussions. We would go through players a wee bit more, but it was kind of much of a muchness. Eckersley obviously gets plaudits because he was fairly solid and came up with a moment that mattered, but I didn't really want to single out players, because other than Alexander, there wasn't too many players that had a great game or were particularly poor. So I thought in general terms with the team, discipline was a massive question for Hearts at the start of the season, with the team kind of seemingly picking up a disproportionate amount of yellow cards, despite the somewhat physical nature of Saturday's game. Physical in quotes, because there was a few rather tasty challenges. One elbow on Billy King that sticks in mind in particular, but given how physical it was, we got away with one booking at the weekend, and that was for Billy King not retreating at a free kick. Is the disciplinary issue now solved? Are we not worried about that any longer?
I think it was highlighted more because our first two games of the season were against Rangers and Hibs, and naturally they were going to be quite physical matches. I think we intended for that, especially in the first half against Rangers. I think we wanted to get in their faces, make sure they weren't getting much time on the ball, and then play our own game in the second half, which seemed to work well. Apart from the odd needless booking for Gomez and that recently, I can't think of a lot of disciplinary problems. There was reports the Ozturk against Queens maybe being a bit fortunate, but as you've seen with Chris Boyd, it's not a headbutt. So it's fine. It's all fair game now. They've opened up the floodgates, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was just going to briefly touch up on it as well. It's good to see us escaping with just the one booking. I don't think it's as simple as there will be not as many bookings as we think they're going to be, because our midfield is a very physical midfield, and there will be referees, they can't wait to kind of book them, but I'll stay in the middle. I'll say it won't be a massive problem, but I still see particularly our midfield missing out on important games for the rest of the season. I think there'll be the odd game where, say, a Gomez misses out and we'll be needing him.
Okay, so there's still a slight concern there, but maybe no more than usual, would we say?
Yeah, pretty much, because we've been obviously notorious for how many fines have we had for discipline and stuff. And I actually personally think we've got a more physical style of play now in terms of getting the ball back. I think it's not as bad as it was in terms of picking up bookings, but the possibility of picking up bookings has maybe risen a bit.
I think you're right that we are a much more physical team now, and there's actually more. I can see how opposition fans would get more frustrated with us now, but I think the reason they would get more frustrated is we're no longer a naive physical team who gets frustrated and uses it in the wrong way. We've now got more experienced campaigners, wily campaigners who know how to use it and can be a wee bit naughty as and when it's called for, but know how to get away with it, as we're going to get onto with the Boyd thing right after these adverts. So we'll go to a break right now, and we will come back to a few more general discussions about football. We'll talk about Boyd and discipline in general, and we will talk about fan culture, and then we'll do a quick preview after the culmination of the first quarter of the season. We'll do a preview for both clubs of the second quarter. Stay with us on Monday Night Football. Welcome back to Monday Night Football. Much hilarity in the studio because we're discussing the subject of Chris Boyd. We won't stay on it for too long because it's kind of been done to death, and Scott was rather forthright in his views on the Monday Night Football Facebook page a few days ago. We're all of the opinion that if Jamie Walker's was a red card, then Chris Boyd's was a red card. Are we?
Definitely
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if the fact that it came up because of the evidence on TV, which is, I mean, how what can
it's one of those exclusive to Scottish football things.
I mean, people looking in must just go, is this, I mean, I know what their opinions of us are anyway, but when they see things like this specifically, they must go, not only is the football on the field, a bit of schoolboy stuff, but behind the scenes it must be who's running this game. But nah, it's something that kind of we're used to, I suppose, being non-Old Firm fans, but it's just so obvious now. I mean, how can you defend that, you know what I mean? So
I think it was the language used to describe it, not proven. I'm not entirely sure what else was required. If the referee doesn't see it on the night, I get that can happen, but it was relatively well proven by the cameras that he didn't go like full Francis Begbie on him, but he made enough of a gesture on a football park. It's a sending off, and there should be like the kind of associated suspension that goes with it. And just because they got beat, I think it's almost a case of like, well, what more damage can you do? They lost the match.
Aye, as Scott hinted at on Facebook, really, it's the thing of how can a case entirely brought up and supported by video evidence then be not proven by the exact video evidence that saw the guy brought up on the charges. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense. I have to say I'm glad we brought it up though, because it did lead to one of the best bits of managerial kind of just positioning in terms of Robbie Nielsen, that he got asked the question in his press conference about, do you regret not challenging the Jamie Walker one now? And he essentially what he said was, no, because we've got morals. In terms of, well, we've got a set of standards that we hold our players to. Jamie admits that he did something silly. We think he did something silly. Why would we then challenge it? Whether it's technically a red card or not, we fined them 2 weeks' wages for it, so it was the wrong thing to do. if Rangers are that desperate to have Boyd, then they can kind of live and die by that. I know that Hibs fans listening will question the moral fibre of Hearts as a club and that kind of thing, but it is right to a certain extent. It's clear to see, Ali McCoy's watching that video, it was clear to see that Chris Boyd, that's worth a red card. Is it desperation on their part that they actually felt they need to?
I think so. I think the fact that they accepted Mosney's suspension straight away probably indicates that they're proven to everyone, the media, the fans, everyone, that there's a player that they value currently, and there's a player that they don't. It's probably got more to do with the fact that Clark and Miller are injured and Daly's coming back from injury. So if Boyd had been suspended for those 2 games, who would have played? He might have actually had to have watched an under-20s game. I mean, we all know he can't do that. So I'd like to see how many instalments they're going to pay the £1,000 that you have to pay to appeal the decision.
The guys behind the scenes,
phone to Mike Ashley again.
The guys behind the scenes must have been thinking themselves as well, all those pesky Hearts getting away with it. We'll show them. We'll get Chris Boyd, he should be out, but we'll bring him back. You know, it's not proven, but not realising it's Chris Boyd now. It's not really done much.
Well,
anyway,
that's true, but then that kind of, the whole Rangers laughing stock thing at the moment only served to sweep this under the carpet to a certain extent, because it was laughed off in terms of well, that's a benefit for the other teams anyway, them having Chris Boyd. But again, that seems to be a tactic to sidestep the issue, that it seems to be one rule for Rangers and one rule for everyone else again. The disappointing thing is, I think Robbie Nielsen's right in terms of appealing the decision, but it is a disappointment now that Hearts didn't appeal the decision, to see, because then we would have had a direct comparison whether Walker's was upheld and Boyd's wasn't, because Hearts just accepted it. The SFA have now got the get out clause of, well, had Hearts appealed, Walker may well have got off as well. So it leaves that, that slightly blurry kind of issue. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out over the rest of the season. Now we see that, I think up until now we had all assumed that those appeals against things on video evidence were pointless. They had obviously 100% clarified that they were guilty before they charged them. Now that's not the case.
Yeah.
The spotlight's now on the SFA now. They've got to treat everyone the same, so any minimal contact of the head, which is what it was. I mean, if it was up to me, it wouldn't be a red card.
No, I'm the exact same.
The standard's been set, so we'll just need to wait and see. There will be an incident. I'm sure Jim Goodwin's playing on Saturday, so I'm pretty sure someone like him, there'll be an incident coming up soon, no doubt.
We need Alan Pardew as the next Rangers manager, and then we'll get this every couple of weeks. Okay, right, let's move on to the wider discussion of fan culture then. This came to mind because one of our listeners, at Dave Trevor on Twitter, brought it up as a conversation point a couple of weeks ago, because Hibs have seen quite a lot of smoke bombs, I believe, set off, especially at away matches this season, and Hearts, I think, had 3 in the away end on Saturday. Funnily enough, Leanne Dempster actually put a long comment on Hibs.net, I think yesterday, and this is one of the things covered in it, because there was, I think, a bit of an issue on Saturday with some fans who were either denied entry or quickly ejected from Easter Road by the stewards. Now, I'm just going to read her statement on this, and then we can have a wider discussion.
You realise the show finishes at 11.
It's alright, I've just isolated that paragraph. If I read the whole statement, we would be here for about a week and we might miss the derby. Okay, right. Leanne Dempster said, "The drum yesterday. We did not ask for this to be stopped. We did ask for flags to be searched, as there have been numerous complaints from supporters who don't like the effects of smoke bombs, etc. So we've significantly stepped up security to try and eliminate these. You may like the colour, but others don't, and others don't enjoy the experience. They find it frightening and dangerous. These are also not allowed under any rules and cause the club constant issues. I'd ask that those involved with Section 43 get in touch with me and we can come up with a plan that makes the matchday experience better, that makes those who want to get involved happier with the outcome. I am all for matchday noise, colour and atmosphere, and I will help you as much as possible, home and away, to achieve this, but we need to do it in a way that works for everyone." What are our thoughts on smoke bombs and that kind of atmosphere in general, and then specifically on Leanne Dempster's approach? Do we agree completely with Leanne?
Not completely, because I agree with the whole point. I mean, the rule's there for a reason. everyone knows the rules in advance. Don't take it long, or you'll get chucked out. She may have exaggerated just slightly with people not liking it for certain reasons, or they're scared of it. No, that's not the case. I mean, if you've got a bit of asthma maybe. But, no, in terms of the actual whole wider issue, it's not going to happen. The rules are never going to change. Personally, I like them in terms of they do add atmosphere to the game, but it's the people that hold them that the problems with. It's the average football fan who brings them along. As soon as you show a slight acceptance of these things, then you'll get every second fan bringing them along.
Yeah.
And then you'll get someone chucking them on a pitch, someone chucking at a player, at a referee, and then it becomes a bigger issue. So the way it is just now, the way the rules are just now, is absolutely fine. I wouldn't change it. But if it is kept brought up every single week, then I think maybe clubs need to look into organising things like that themselves within the club. So making something, it's never going to happen, but attachments to the stadium, shooting out whatever maroon smoke or something, just don't put it in the fans' hands in terms of they have the power to decide whether to bring one in or not, because unfortunately it's not going to happen.
Is that your issue, Scott, the slippery slope aspect of it all?
I think I'm right in thinking that it was Section 43 that were involved in this.
Yes,
on Saturday.
well, they are certainly mentioned by name in the statement.
They do seem to be quite a well organised group of individuals, young and old supporters. I think there just needs to be a little bit more thought and maybe a bit more planning beforehand. Just say, look, if it's going to happen, it needs to happen in this section. Small section of the stadium is involved in this, and it's just the one flare. It's set off in a safe manner, because it can be done. We see this every Saturday, Sunday when we're watching games on the TV on BT or whatever in other countries. It's not as bad as what it's made out to be. A lot of the time it's kids just wanting to raise a bit of atmosphere at the ground. They maybe don't know a lot of the older songs that their dads are singing and that, and they just want to do their own thing and create their own stamp on the games. That's it. When it was my day, I was one of these idiots that when I was 12 and 13 I'd sing the Hello Hello song. What I needed was an elder to pull me aside and say, look, sing it, but didn't he sing the daft stuff at the end,
Well, that is an interesting point in terms of the rebellion aspect of it, because I think, and Ross touched on that to a certain extent, that the danger element of it is over-egged. In terms of, I remember a smoke bomb being thrown on at Easter Road, and the players having, I know a couple of people involved with it, the security aspect of football and the policing and that kind of thing, and the players had a strict instruction: it's dangerous if you go anywhere near them, leave them alone, the stewards will come on, they'll get the bucket and the spade and get them off and that kind of thing. And they waited kind of a minute and a half, and Zal eventually went across and just kicked the thing off the park. And you then get the thing, but it's dangerous. But in actual fact, we all know it's not really as dangerous as it's made out to be. And that then brings up the thing where kids have the reaction of, it's no dangerous.
That's an example of misuse, though. It's the individual deciding to throw it in the park. Now that is where it becomes dangerous.
But what I mean is that those kids that you're talking about, the 13, 14 year olds, the fact that they're told, don't bring them, they're dangerous to you and everyone around you, that makes them think, no, they aren't.
Yeah.
And there's that rebellious aspect of it, rather than it being, look, we'll do this stuff for you, or we'll allow it to a certain extent, but you're spoiling it for other people, as opposed to over-egging the thing of, you're putting your life in danger. I'm just holding a smoke bomb.
Yeah, and when they look on the TV, they must see like war zones in the stand in comparison, like in Turkey
and you're right, they will look at Galatasaray and look at Welcome to Hell and that kind of thing, and think, well, we're doing nothing compared to that. Mikey, you're obviously more in touch with Section 43 and the Hibs side of things. What's your thoughts on this subject?
Personally, I don't love it, I don't dislike it. It's kind of a bit of a nothing issue for myself personally, but it's always been talked about a lot. I feel as though at the moment there's people, fellow supporters are complaining about it. It is, I'm not sure if it's like actually illegal, or if it's kind of like a sort of football sort of thing that it's been put into kind of a sort of code of conduct. But I think that we're Hibs winning a lot at the moment. Those supporters who are maybe sitting there in the 70th minute watching us draw 0-0 in Dumbarton are then getting that sulphuric smell through their nose. maybe wouldn't complain if we were 3-0 up at the time. But at the moment, yeah, there's probably an opportunity to have another grumble and a groan about things like this. I think we're possibly targeting the wrong opportunities to, if they're going to do it, they're maybe taking the wrong opportunities to do so, and maybe a home game against
so they're making themselves look,
and it's maybe not being taken quite so seriously. They've been watching obviously a lot of YouTube videos of Partizan Belgrade and Poznan and all these places, and like they've got the right idea, but I think our current station that we're at, it's maybe just waiting for a better day, and something may work to build that atmosphere, but I don't think it's adding to the atmosphere quite at the moment. It's not adding to more than what the drums are doing and their singing section. It seems to be bringing more to play than the smoke bombs. It might be that it's different at a key derby or a big cup match, but I don't really think that it's adding anything. I personally also don't think it's really creating any negativity, other than folk who aren't very happy with things on the park are being given some ammunition to complain about it as well.
It's funny that you make that point about the results, because it has been a point of ridicule for both clubs that I think Hibs let off one after going 1-0 down to Queen of the South and Hearts fans let off at least a couple being 4-1 down to Livingston in the Petrofac Training Cup, which is one of the most depressing experiences that I've ever encountered. I have to say, from my perspective, I understand the argument that it adds to, or people who think it adds to the atmosphere. I have to say, I've seen them let off at Easter Road and that kind of thing, just after we've scored the goal and that, and I've never thought, oh great, that's really added to the experience. I'm so glad that makes everything seem so much better that there's a smoke bomb. It is, like you say, Mikey, it's kind of an irrelevance, and when it then potentially can get the club in bother with the authorities, it can lead to restrictions on away fans and that kind of thing. That's when it starts to annoy me personally, in that it seems redundant. It seems like, and it's like you say, Scott, and it has crept in a wee bit, and I don't want to be too negative about fans and that kind of thing, but the naughty version of hello hello has cropped up a few times over the last few weeks, more than I have heard it in a wee while. And there is that element now that we're winning again that seems to be back on the terracing, and this whole adventure in the First Division seems to have brought the 80s out in them a wee bit. You do get to the point where you're starting to risk that this can have an impact on the club. As well run as we are now, we'll start to get fines for fans' behaviour, we'll start to potentially flirt with points deductions and those kind of things. Will it take that to then get really serious and other fans self-police to a certain extent?
Possibly. I mean, I don't want to get too negative about it. I mean, the alternative to some 13 and 14 year olds bringing flares to the games would be take the flares off them, but then their behaviour will come out in other ways. This is just their way of proving themselves to their elders, especially guys in sections like Section 43, and there'll be elements in the Hearts report who do it as well. Now, they probably go to away games with guys who are maybe twice their age on the bus, and they'll hear stories about what these guys used to get up to in the 70s and 80s, which was a hell of a lot worse than taking a flare to a game. Now, me personally, I'd rather see a flare at the game than seeing these guys run amok in the streets afterwards, pretending to be hard men. Now, when I was at Dumfries, there was a crowd of guys on our bus, and they were singing the Gorgie Agro song, and they were only about 18, 19. And I'm thinking, these guys weren't even born when the Gorgie Agro was on. Sorry to hear its pomp, It's just kids being kids. I was the same when I was that age. I like to sing the odd song, especially at the away games, especially in the pubs. And most 99% of us grow out of it by a certain stage. And
does it make a difference when it's not kids then?
Yeah,
does it make a difference when you see 45-year-old men singing Edinburgh's Wonderful and that kind of thing?
I'm in my 30s now. I'd like to think that if I'm sitting next to somebody, and I have raised it with people if they've been on the same bus I have, or maybe in the pub, just, not being too preachy, but just saying, look, trust me, you'll get to an age where you really don't want to be here singing this. It brings up the point about, I was on Hibs.net the weekend, and they were talking about the banner that they were wanting to make about the Poppy debate, about the charity. Now, there's bad elements on both sides with the Poppies, and I've been listening to Hearts songs, sing the German Bombers song. Hibs fans are quite happy to bring it up just now that some charity money wasn't paid to creditors. Now, I think both sides should just shut up. I think the people who did fight and die in that war who were connected to Hearts and who were connected to Hibs. There was a lot of people from Hibs, Rafe Rovers, Falkirk and that as well. I just think they would have walked away from that and just wanted to keep a dignified silence. Now, we do strips, we do the minute silence, we do the memorial every November. Why not just keep it at that? There doesn't need to be any songs, just like there doesn't need to be any banners, just to try and get a rise out of the Hearts fans as well in a couple of weeks. Let's focus on the here and now. Simple.
Yeah. No, I think we can all agree on that. There are subjects that should be confronted in a positive manner to celebrate the history of the clubs and that kind of thing. When you start to go into that from a negative perspective, it's actually a much bigger issue, and it kind of leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouth for everyone, as we saw with the Green Brigade and their exploration into the whole poppy debate that went badly for everyone involved. Okay, we'll get off the serious subject then, and we'll move on to the football to round up. First and foremost, let's just preview the next couple of games, because they both lead to the derby. So we've got Hearts at home at Dumbarton, and Hibs away to Livingston. How important is it for both teams to get a win going into a huge derby?
It's massive for Hibs, absolutely massive. I mean, this derby is so big. I mean, it is still an important game to Hearts, but Hearts' biggest problem is going to be complacency and walking into games now against Hibs and Rangers knowing that a draw is actually good enough, but you don't want the players to be in that. This is where Robbie Nielsen's going to start really earning his money. He's going to have to convince these players that they can walk into these games now thinking that a draw is good enough. If you go and attack for the first minute and end up with a draw, that's fine, we'll take that. But as soon as you start looking for a draw in derby games, like we saw under managers like McGlynn and Laszlo, that's when you start losing matches by the odd goal.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Hibs, I mean, they'll take a bit of confidence, I suppose, into they beat them before. We'll not talk about how they beat them, but they did beat them, and they'll look at the result at the end of the day rather than the performance back then. So it is a massive game just before the derby, and I do see them getting a result as well. So yeah, and in terms of the Hearts side, Dumbarton, we've got a point to prove against them. I don't see a massive difference in terms of our other kind of home games from the lower league, lower teams in the league, but I don't see a bigger scoreline as maybe the other types of games. So maybe 3-0 is probably as bad as it's going to get for Dumbarton. Okay. But yeah, I see us beating them, and again, I don't see it being a massive issue.
Mikey, how vital is the game at Amondale?
I don't feel particularly confident about the result, so I'm going to play down how important it is.
Okay. Do you think it will have any impact on the derby at all, or the horrendously worn out phrase of the form book going out of the window? Is it that ultimately we can talk up the importance of the games this weekend, but when it comes to the derby, actually none of us will remember this week? It'll all be about that game.
It would be fantastic to go into the derby on the back of the result. How much more up for it gets the players, I do not know. There has to be a belief in them that they're good football players. So whether they win, lose or draw against Livingston, they should go into the derby match with the appropriate associated amount of motivation to get the job done, and kind of still saying to themselves, we're good footballers here, we can get a result against Hearts. They've not steamrolled every side, they've dropped points here and there. Like we can definitely beat them. We could have beat them in the last match, and we were really quite ordinary in the first few games. So a win would give us a wee bit of momentum, but then Ross County and Rangers sort of results didn't necessarily prove that momentum was going to do us any good. The fact it's away from home may just this sort of like mythical pressure we're under at Easter Road, the fact it's away from home may just give them that freedom to go out and take a few risks. If things don't go quite so right, there's only maybe a few hundred, 1,500 people possibly giving them a bit of a hard time about it. But I think the derby still remains quite a standalone fixture, and I don't think it's hugely influenced by form at the time. We sort of proved that for a spell when we were doing quite well under Mowbray and had some good results, but also some really horrible results at Tynecastle that we probably perceived that we should be winning. So I'm not entirely sure. I think that the derby will kind of stand out its own 2 feet.
Okay, looking in a broader sense then at the second quarter of the season, we've seen the first quarter go now. Both teams have played 9 games. Hibs having amassed 11 points for those 9. Hearts having amassed 25. We'll get in a couple of minutes, just to warn you, we're going to end the show with your prediction of how many points we're going to get out of the next 9. So the couple of questions I've got in the quarter, just to see how it stacks up when we actually get to the end. What's the game that jumps out at you as being a nailed on win for either side? The game that you're most confident, the team that you're most confident about us, or Hibs or Hearts, demolishing in the next round of fixtures?
I think home to Raith Rovers. I think Raith Rovers have already proved a couple of times this season that they do try to match Hearts and Hibs and Rangers, and I think that'll be their undoing again at Tynecastle. I just think when they go 4-4-2 against us, like they did at Starks Park,
Yeah.
I just think we'll be too much for them.
Boss?
For me, home to Alloa. I mean, they're at the bottom of the table for a reason, and any advantages they got from the last game there goes out the window when they come to our house, so to speak. So yeah, Alloa.
Yeah, it's a funny one that I kind of feel the same. I think we've kind of set the tone at Tynecastle so far this season that even Rangers coming to Tynecastle, I don't fear a huge amount, and that may come back to haunt us massively, but it feels like we have got the perfect kind of setup at Tynecastle. We've built the perfect stage for the players just to go out and play, whereas away from home you do have the thing of breaking teams down and getting used to the surroundings and stuff. And for a long time we've had that at Tynecastle. You felt like we need 20-25 minutes to feel our way into the game and make sure that the fans are on side and know what we're trying to do. This season it feels like we can just go out and play. Mikey, what's the game for Hibs that you think?
I think it's a split between two, either Alloa at home or Rangers at home.
Okay. I think you've got the Indian sign over there.
I've put in a couple of their best performances of the season against Rangers, and I think they're finding it difficult to get themselves up for seemingly big matches as well. Alloa at home, we kind of owe them for a bit of a kind of sort of shameful result at their house. So I'm not entirely sure how many 3 points we're going to pick over the next quarter, but I think those two are possibly our best hopes.
Okay, least confident?
I'm going to hate saying it, but Hibs. Reason being that in the last game there wasn't that very much between the teams, and looking at all the games, I mean, Hibs probably gave us the best game, arguably. So, and I don't think the team is as bad then. It's worse then. I think they're improving slightly, and I think they will slightly improve in the next couple of games as well. And I know Hibs is in a couple of weeks, but I do see Hibs causing us a problem. Do I see them getting a result? I'll say that's going to be a draw, and I think I know we'll touch on it briefly, but I think that's where one of our drop points will be coming from, is the Hibs game.
Okay, Scott?
Being the harbinger of doom, I'd probably have to agree with Ross. I always worry about playing Hibs. It doesn't matter on who's playing for Hearts, who's playing for Hibs, form, etc. It does kind of go out the window in terms of how I feel about these matches. I just have this nagging doubt, because I do feel we'll get the 3 points against Dumbarton, and I remember being at Easter Road in 2005, and I do remember going in there with lots of confidence and having a great side, and Hibs did tear us apart that day. Now Hibs had a far better team in 2005 than they do now, and we don't have John McGlynn managing us in this game, so we do have a couple of things going for us, but I do think that could be one that ends up being a score draw. I've got a funny feeling that could be a score draw, that match.
Mikey, first, before we talk about which game you're most worried about, are the Jambos right to fear Hibs at Easter Road the most?
In a sense that it's got to be the game that we're most up for. They're hopefully going to see the kind of best version of Hibs that they're going to see throughout the season. It's surely going to be at Easter Road on the back of having lost the last derby, maybe discovering themselves a wee bit more as to kind of what type of team we're going to be. Some of the players are a bit more settled in. We've added some players to the lineup that was at Tynecastle, so it's understandable to sort of target it as the one the match you might sort of fear losing points the most. And it's also just like any derby, you're just always going, let's just not get beat.
Yeah.
It's like I could take a draw. It's always that kind of mentality coming towards a derby.
Okay, so for you, is it the same game, or do you feel?
Certainly, like it's obvious you're playing a team that's top of the league. If that team at the top of the league also happens to be a team that's made quite a habit of beating you over the last few seasons, then yeah, you identify it. I also think Falkirk away is going to be a bit of a ropey game for us, but yeah, I wouldn't enjoy losing the derby, and the impact of it, with it being like the kind of sort of cliched 6-pointer. We win it, we take a wee clawback processes, but we lose it, then it's like a really like kind of scary numbers between the two sides. Regardless if we both win at the weekend, it's going to be like really kind of dubious looking sort of difference between the two sides.
Okay, right. The moment of truth then. Points tallies. So I want both clubs. So Hearts and Hibs. So just to remind you again, Hearts have got 25 points from the first 9 games. Hibs have got 11 points from the first 9 games. Ross, second 9.
Right, I'm going to say slightly less points for us and slightly more points for Hibs.
Okay.
So I'll go with 21 for Hearts. I do see us getting beat at one of these games. I think the odds are against us. If you're going to the bookies and say we're going to win these next 9 games, it could be Hibs. It could be Rangers.
Okay.
But I see us getting maybe a cheeky draw away to someone that maybe we should have won. It's going to be one of those games where we're going to an unknown place and coming out midweek, and coming out with a draw.
Okay. So 21 is the number.
21 is the number, and for Hibs, slightly more. So what was it? 11. Is that right? Just now?
Yeah.
Hibs, right. Okay. I see them getting 2 more victories on top of that. So I'll say 17 points.
Okay. Mikey.
Well, I've got Hibs for 17. That's a mixture of kind of doom and gloom at a couple of away matches against the sort of sticky teams, but then also kind of almost sort of blind optimism that we're going to do Rangers at Easter Road. So we might still get to that 17 in a completely reverse order from where I thought we would.
Yeah, that's very possible.
And like the results that I've kind of sort of considered for us to get there aren't really inconceivable, but we could, get towards 20 if we convert a couple of draws that'd be a bit sort of disappointing into victories, depending on if this mindset and this confidence going to come from one good or bad result. It might be the derby, it might be Livingston at the weekend there. It just really ignites the team into believing that they're a good side, and then they start generating some consistency and some good away wins, and then a couple of Easter Road would be a starting to turn the corner as well, get the fans back on side.
Okay, and what have you got Hearts in right then?
2021. I think that teams will become slightly wiser to Hearts in this kind of second rotation. The fact that Dumbarton's coming up, I think, for you guys next, the way they played against us is that it's very deep and it's very narrow and neat, and it could become down to like the younger Hearts players, if they got that kind of patience in them to keep chipping away like they did at the weekend there and got that 1-0 win. It might be end up relying on that same sort of result. If that doesn't happen for you and it's at home, then does that have an impact in a couple other matches? If you win that game at home at Dumbarton, and then if you potentially conceivably beat Hibs, then you could go and do another 25. But I think that 2021, I think we have a few more drops.
So this is a slightly naughty question then off the back of that, but given that there's a 14-point difference between the teams at this moment in time, and you've still got Hearts to pick up a couple more points than Hibs in the second quarter, is it just done and dusted that Hibs are finishing? There's absolutely no question.
I don't think there's any, unless there's a complete capitulation by Hearts at some point. I don't think it's conceivable for us to consider winning the league at the moment. We just need to get into that top 4 and hopefully hit it in a really good run of form and sort of bulldoze our way through. Beyond that, there needs to be a collapse from Hearts at some point. A couple of key guys getting injured, whatever it may be, but there needs to be some sort of serious downfall. I think Rangers are going to make the top 4, but it'll not be in any kind of spectacular fashion. Top 4 has to be the key. Timing it right, having the hot streak at the right time. If it means we scrape into 4th place in the last game, then so be it. If we do it at the right time and in the right fashion, then the also good thing is if we did that and Hearts won the league, we wouldn't have to play as in a playoff.
It's a funny bit.
When those kind of big deciding matches haven't been our forte of the last while, so I think take on some other sides in those key matches.
It's really interesting to hear the opposition's thoughts on how you're going to perform over the next 9 games though. Scott, what do you think for Hearts first?
I think for Hearts, I think we'll win another 7 or 8 games, but I think we will eventually lose one. I can't quite pinpoint where it's going to be, but we're not good enough to go through the season unbeaten.
Okay.
We do have a strong spine to our team though, but I mean, we're guessing. I mean, you never know what could happen. Gomez and Boabin could both pull up with injuries on Saturday. You just never know. So that it's just an educated guess on the squad that we've got and who's fit just now.
Okay, so we're going what, 24?
24. Hibs. Now
Nice,
I'm going to get stick for this. Hibs not there are going to love me. 12 for Hibs. I think they're going to be quite inconsistent. I could really see Hibs end up with 3 wins, 3 draws and 3 defeats.
That's the most backhanded of compliments. Well, you'll get better.
I can't see them losing games by much or winning games by much. They're going to miss El Alagui. They've got no one to hit. They've not got a target up there. Malonga likes the ball to his feet. Cummins likes to play in behind players, and they don't seem to be able to play to those guys' strengths, especially at home just now. Worked perfectly in the Rangers game, but not seen much of it, evidence much of it in the other matches, and I think that's going to continue to hit them hard until El Alagui comes back in January. And that's the reason I think they are getting there, but they've just not got enough going for them up top now to really blow teams away.
Well, that is the really telling thing about these next 9 games, is that these are the games that will see us up until January, to the transfer window, where you can make any tweaks to your squad or get those kind of long-term injuries back.
And what about you, Sam? You're keeping quiet there.
You would like to. I like to be as confident as possible, and I would love to sit and say 27 points for Hearts, but the law of averages does suggest that it won't happen. I can't see Hearts losing many games at all, so I would probably go round about 23. I think 7 wins and 2 draws. I genuinely think there is the thing of Hearts have got enough to scrape by being unbeaten again in the next round of fixtures, but I don't think they'll win all the games. I think there will be games where, like the Alloa game, where it's settling for a point rather than scrapping out that last minute win. For Hibs, I think Hibs will improve, but I think he'll probably have to change the system to do it. I think he has to. I think he's now learned that the 3-5-2 is perfect against better opposition who will come out and try and dominate the football, but he needs to just be more cavalier against teams who are going to sit in and throw the kitchen sink at them and take the risk. I don't think they'll perform as well as Hearts, but I think they will get 17 points, maybe 16-17 points round about there. I think they'll sort out the record as it stands at the moment, because I think they're still at that point of having kind of lost more games than they've won, which is it's kind of scary at this point in the season. I think they'll correct that and things will start to even out a wee bit more. The league table's really odd in that you're looking at Falkirk sitting 6th and thinking they were a danger to us. Like Scott says about Wraith Rovers are a team that you look at and think, soft touch really when they come to play us, but they're sitting 4th in the league. They seem really well equipped to batter everyone else in the league. Just no real. I mean, I know they got a point at Easter Road, but
going on who I've seen it, I'd fancy Queens for the 4th spot, like to be in that top 4.
Yeah,
Hearts, Hibs and Rangers.
That was the most of the comfortable wins that Hearts have had. That was the one that least resembled a comfortable win. It was more about getting the goals when it really mattered and then seeing it out from there. I think it's going to be really interesting. I mean, we've started the show at the perfect time because there's going to be so much to talk about, which leads us on to the derby. Obviously, we've got these games at the weekend. Next week's show will be heavily focused on those, but also a major derby preview, because the tension in the studio is going to be palpable. And then obviously the week after we're going to have a massive derby reaction show, and then we hope the week after that we've potentially got a special guest in the studio.
Yeah, I mean, we can announce it just now. We've got Foundation Hearts director Gary. He'll be on 5th of November, I believe, if that's the correct date, on the Monday. So we will be sticking questions up on the Facebook, asking for questions to go to Gary up on the Facebook page and up on Twitter. So keep it locked on those two pages, and we will
The 3rd
keep
of November, I believe.
Oh, the 3rd, sorry. The 3rd, there you go, there's my calendar. So yeah, we will keep everyone updated on that, so I can't wait for that.
Okay, on that subject, Scott, you've got a wee announcement as well.
Yeah, I'd just like to make an announcement for anyone who doesn't know. Big Hearts, who are a great community and charity organisation, they're holding a big reunion for former Hearts heroes at Tynecastle on Saturday the 15th of November. Now, it kicks off at 8 o'clock and Hearts are playing Falkirk at 5:30 that night, but you would have time to make it back. If you don't want to do that, you can watch the game in the Gorgie Suite before the big reunion kicks off. There's going to be a lot of ex-players coming back. We've got Thomas Fogel, Bruno Aguiar, Jose Katongo, Jimmy Bowen, Alan Anderson, Craig Beattie, and there is still a few to be named. Now, if you want a ticket, there's a limited amount of tickets left. They're priced at £20 per person and they can be bought. You've got to email the following address, and this is all lowercase. It's communications@bighearts.org.uk. So if you get through to them on that, or on Twitter, which is @HeartsCommunity, then you might be able to grab one of the last remaining tickets, but it should be a good show.
It definitely will. The one negative is that's the night I've got us paying for dropping our first points. I think we'll win the derby, beat Raith Rovers, and then draw with Falkirk at the Falkirk Stadium. But hopefully I'm wrong. But I'm sure either way that night will be a belter. There's some proper Hearts legends there. So what better way to spend your time than hanging out with them? If you're a Jambo, Mikey, that would be your idea of hell. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, everyone. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the chat. We'll be back next week with a roundup and a massive derby preview. We'll leave you with a night of music on Radio Saltire. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.